Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate, the show you've been waiting for. Three pasty, bald, chubby guys talking politics. You can't get that anywhere else but right here. From the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel, our good friend Charles Ashby, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And from the Denver Post, you guys are still in business? Tim Hoover, glad to have you.
There's only two of you pasty bald guys here, so
somebody's in denial. We were there. We've kind of accepted it.
Can we agree? Chicks dig this.
Yes, actually they do. Once you go bald, you never go back. It happens. It's true.
Yeah. Let's just drink and get it over
let's
with.
just have a drink.
All right, I thought what we do here is talk about the year that went by, 2012, the year that was. And this was an interesting year, not just for the elections that happened recently, but throughout the year. I thought we'd kind of go over a couple of stories and if they still have legs and what's going on. The fires took off this year. Let's start off with that. This became Fire Central. Right. And unlike a previous governor who said all of Colorado is burning, Hickenlooper was very good to say, oh, we got this under control.
Select portions.
Yeah, only part of Colorado is burning, I think he said.
Only the part where people actually live.
Right.
How does it look now? What was the story after it's all said and done?
I think the story, certainly for Hickenlooper, was okay. He looked responsive. He didn't look like he was sort of caught unaware and flat-footed on any of that. I think that obviously longer term, you're going to have some more serious discussions about how it is that folks build properties in these places, and are there going to have to be certain I don't know, regulations about how things are maintained?
For me, the whole year seems to revolve around Colorado being a swing state, and that when those fires happened, I knew Air Force One is coming, and sure enough, it came. Any event that seemed to happen throughout Colorado, from the Aurora shootings to civil union fights, it all had this tinge of how is it going to affect.
Oh, exactly right.
Well, that's the accident of politics. You never let a good disaster go to waste.
Yeah.
I mean, and now you talk about the shootings. We're going to end up seeing legislation on that. With the fires, we're going to see some sort of legislation on that. One thing that I find interesting on the fires, though, if you remember back in the early 2000, 2002, when we had major fires, when was Haven? 2004? We had discussion about drought. We had a major drought this last 2 years,
right.
But I have not heard a lot of people talk about that. So why wasn't that? I mean, for my side of the state, we've had a lot of stories about the drought stuff. I did not see that anywhere else. You had a lot of fire stories and a lot of good coverage of that and very dramatic stuff, but nobody's talking about that. That's part of the underlying cause.
We're taking all your water, so it's fine.
And that's going to stop. Big straw thing, because they got too much water.
No, now it's going through Wyoming, the new big straw.
Oh, really?
That's still bringing it all the way from Kansas. If you've read our paper recently,
trust me, I have not read your paper recently.
You should.
Really?
You should be a subscriber, John.
No.
Many coupons for bald men.
Rogaine, 2 for 1. The fires were politicized. Some people were saying, well, look, the feds didn't have the airplanes in time. They didn't have the planes that they should have had.
Right.
Under the Clinton APA rules, we couldn't have roads that went into the forest, so we couldn't even get to it.
Right.
This is a stupid question, but was there a political winner or loser out of the fires, or was it just a terrible tragedy?
I don't think most people really, on balance, came away with, it wasn't like a Katrina-type verdict at the end of the day where people said this was, utterly, a heck of a job, Hickenlooper sort of thing. It was, I don't think it really stuck. I think that, long term, I think what's more likely to happen is there's going to be very serious discussions about how people are allowed to build in these, forest communities, and how they have to maintain those properties.
Right. Now, I have a cabin up in the mountains at 11 Mile, and one of the fires started like a mile away and was going the other direction, fortunately. But my insurance company requires a defensible space. That's part of the problem that they had in Colorado Springs was they were building up into the foothills. And people, you think you're in a suburb, and wildfires don't happen in the suburb, they don't happen in the city. Well, no, you're not. You forget, you're actually in the mountains. and so you need a defensible space. And that's an interesting issue, but is that a statewide issue? That's more of a local thing. Now, what you're going to see...
It's also an insurance thing,
right?
That when the feds bail out homeowners too easily,
right,
and therefore they don't have much, it's going to be an emergency relief. We're going to be okay. But if it goes to the homeowners and the insurance companies, then what happens is what happens with you. Right. There are more restrictions, and that seems to be a good sense.
It may be that the insurance companies are the ones that come and say, could we please have some regulation on this? Because they don't want to be writing checks.
As long as there's regulation, I'm
yeah, there's a requirement to do it. I mean, Florida. I used to live in Florida, and they have problems with obviously hurricanes, right? And insurance companies have, some insurance companies don't want to work in Florida at all because hurricanes come. Well, guess what? They do come, but they do have regulations that that require you to do certain things with building your house, hurricane ties, so they don't blow away, that sort of thing. And maybe that's what's coming here.
Let's switch gear. The legislative session last year, not much happened. You had Republicans in control of one house, Democrats in the other. Kind of a replay of what happened in 2011. But the finish of the 2012 legislative session was just spectacular. I mean, it was a colossal mess up, and it all had to do with civil unions.
Right.
And civil unions, now that Democrats have won sizable majorities in both houses, will certainly happen in the next legislative session. There's no stopping that. Right. But give a quick recount. What happened last year that made it so wonderful?
Well, what happened in the House, I mean, it was clear in the Senate that it was going to pass because the Democrats were in charge there. They had the votes for it. In the House, they had, 5 or 6 Republicans who were going to join the Democrats and vote for it. But they were enough on each committee that it didn't matter which committee it was going to go through. In fact, it passed through 3 committees and got to the floor. And there were enough votes to pass it on the floor, except that Speaker Frank McNulty, no, this ain't happening. And so he basically killed it and killed a bunch of other bills to do it. And they forced him into a special session. Well, there's still bad blood. We just heard the new incoming House Speaker, Frank Ferrandino, who was the sponsor of that bill, who's now going to be in charge, saying, hey, that's not going to happen again. It's going to be, it won't be Senate Bill 1, but it'll be Senate Bill within 10.
It turned out to be a colossal misestimation of the politics because the speaker was saying, no, we're gonna play this one fair, knowing that he had the votes to kill it in committee, and then somebody switched. So he sent it to another committee. Somebody switched. He sent it to the third committee. Somebody switched. It wasn't supposed to go this way, and I wonder what would have happened if he just honestly said, we don't like this bill. We're sending it to State Affairs, which is the kill committee, and you guys can deal with it later.
Yeah, but the problem is on the State Affairs, there was somebody they thought would vote for it.
Right.
At that time. And when they went to the special session, they reconfigured the State Affairs Committee a little bit to make sure there were enough no votes on there, and there were.
But as you know from awesomely being a subscriber of our paper,
he reads the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel because he's smart.
And he's got a parrot.
That's an old newsman's joke. You'll have to go ask your grandfather about that one.
We of course reported that what happened early on was there were indications that the speaker was very willing to let this pass, or at least accepting of it. And what happened is there was a blowback from his own community. And so they tried to reverse course, and it was very awkward. This was the gang that could neither shoot straight nor gay, okay? And it just really backfired. So at the end of it, they managed to infuriate the gay community and Democrats, along with a large degree of the public who have really, even older cohorts of voters, it's been the polling shows this, even older folks who had locked down against the notion of gay marriage, civil unions, they've all changed their minds on this. A lot of older Republicans now have changed their minds on this. And these people perceive a lot of anti-gay statements, comments, and actions as just sort of bullying, mean, and they feel sorry for them. But he managed to, and the Republicans managed to tick off everybody. They got their own conservatives mad.
We're good at that. We know how to do it right.
They got the religious right mad at them. They got the liberals mad at them. They got the gay community mad at them. There was really no one out of that who wasn't furious.
Looking at the issue, though, I look at it politically. for 4 years before that, you know, they had a Democratic governor, they had a Democratic House and Senate. They could have passed this any time.
And so why didn't they?
So why didn't they? They could have done
too
that.
soon after. When was Ref I?
Ref I was in 2006.
There's a simple question.
Right.
There's a simple answer for that. The public wasn't with them.
Yeah. I know. I'm going to take a different tact.
Okay.
I don't think it was that, because if they were leading, they would have done so. You know, they've all were on the record. They could have done it. I believe outside of the gay community, there is a large percentage of strategists on the left who understand that this is a winning issue for them. And while they won't say it publicly, I don't think they really want to see civil unions, gay marriage become law, because then they lose a rallying cry, a victim class that has helped bring a lot of people together. When civil unions happen, you know, some of those people who have fought for it, some of the homosexuals who fought for it, you know what? Afterwards, they're going to look around and say, you know what? I'm, fiscally speaking, I'm a conservative.
That may be true. And you can make the same argument with the Republicans when it comes to illegal immigration. You know, you can make the same argument with Democrats before the federal health care bill came through. There was always a rallying cry every year. But the thing is, so what? I mean, that's going to happen. It didn't have to happen the way it did, though. And that's what hurt the Republicans more than anything else.
I agree. If the Republicans passed this and let it pass a year before, the furor would have been over, it would have been done, but this served the Democratic cause very well. And it's worth noting, they could have done it 4 years, every year before that. So it's not just the Republicans, but certainly it was just deliciously bad.
I suppose, but then people might say, you know, look, on pro-life issues, what you had after late 60s and the Roe v. Wade was there was gradual working up to a more greater body of anti-abortion legislation, and that you couldn't sell people on it overnight, and that it took years to slowly sell more and more of anti-abortion. This is not such a big deal in Colorado, but in other states where, you know, pretty much every state started out as a Roe v. Wade state after the decision, and it's just been, there have been more incremental. It takes a while, a lot of times, to get the public on your side.
Now, what's going to be telling on that, though, is that if that's true, if the Democrats were using that and they don't really want it to pass, then this next session they'll go the next step and say, hey, why don't we just go with gay marriage? Now, we did ask Mark Fernandino that today, and he said, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
we're going to do, but it's not entirely up to him.
Wouldn't that have to be a referred measure?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, let's pull this one back for people who might not be up to speed on it. Okay. So, can we all agree that civil unions certainly will pass and become law here in the next few months in the legislature?
As far as we know,
it's not gay marriage, which is just a different term of art. In order for gay marriage to happen, the legislature would have to refer an amendment to the people or a citizens' initiative.
You need a 2/3 in the legislature to do that.
Right. And so I would imagine the same forces are going to say, but we want equality. We want the word marriage, not the word civil union. I'm curious, and I think that's going to be a couple years down the road if it happens at all. I'm wondering about the homosexual activist machine, Tim Gill, the Gay and Lesbian Fund, Pat Stryker, Jared Polis's money, that have really been at the center of a great coalition for the left. Does that still hold? Does the money still happen in Colorado, or will they move this very successful model to the next state that is on the hit list?
I think in a way Tim Gill is already doing
I was going to
that.
say he's in many states now. They're active throughout the country. Colorado is sort of their home base, but they have folks spread out all over the country who are.
I just want them to stop spending money here. This is the advantage.
He has to keep his base, and he will keep his base doing that. And here's the other.
But it's not going to go backwards. It's not like Republicans are going to take back the House and get rid of civil unions.
Knows? Who knows? These things go in cycles all the time.
There are other issues besides Tim Gill's money in taking the House away from Republicans. It's just that I really think that what that did was got him to open up his checkbook, pretty much write blank checks to the Democrats and their third-party groups, so that in these races where there was a potential of Republicans winning, and that's something else we need to talk about, which is a lot of D's won by greater margins than many of us thought they were going to. But it just in those close races, so does he back off after they get civil unions, or do they some renewed? No one's talked about like, well, we've got to get gay marriage and not just civil unions. What Ferrandino has basically said is that, public's not there yet. That's a fight maybe for another day, but we can do civil unions now.
Right, and that's not his only issue either. I mean, Tim Gill's interested in other things.
He is, but that's the issue that will spark him to write checks.
That's the issue right now, and that's because it's driving elections, as you well know.
And the elections are working. Hey, let's grab a couple of the other big stories. The shooting in Aurora, mirroring what happened a week ago in Connecticut, is tragic, and it hit this community again. For those of us who were here during Columbine, it was a horrific thing to live through again. I thought the governor did a fine job during that tragedy, as Owens did during Columbine. He really he handled that well, and he brought the community together. Hickenlooper at the time went on national television and said this doesn't have anything to do with gun control, wouldn't have changed any of this, which was the right thing to say, and I believe accurate. He's changed his tune on that, and now is the time to talk for gun control. What happened throughout this year that's, we haven't talked about gun control for a decade here, and instead of talking about mental health and whether or not this guy should have been flagged, and looked like there were people who tried to flag him, that seems to have gone aside, and now we're talking about gun control yet again.
Well, I think it's probably always been his issue, gun control, and maybe, or I almost say Columbine, Aurora ruined that, where he wasn't able to talk about it and wanted to push some sort of gun control, and then had no choice. But you know how Hickenlooper is, right? He likes to be the guy who's reasonable in the middle and moderate, and Republicans seem to like him more than Democrats. So it's a popular thing to say at that moment, and he's not wrong to say, look, there's a lot of emotion right now, so people are going to be going, let's ban all guns, let's not ban all guns. I mean, if I had a gun, I could have gotten the guy, that sort of thing. And he's right to say that. But all he has said is, let's have a conversation. He has not been very specific, as he's very good at doing.
Not being specific.
Although they do talk about the assault weapons, and I think that's probably where you're going to see the first thing, is something on assault weapons. We tried to get him, both Tim and I, get him to talk about ammunition. I mean, because this guy
with anything.
Well, anything. Yeah, actually, he didn't get into. Well, you had some other lawmakers talk about the assault rifles, but he wouldn't even talk about the ammunition. And we knew about that was an issue with the Aurora shooting, right? So, I mean, who knows? But yes, it is kind of a flip-flop, and they deny that. Didn't you get in trouble with them?
That one's interesting. How is this not a flip-flop?
They insist that that they didn't change their tune.
The governor's office.
Yes, and the governor himself. And their argument is, now just follow this through, the question that he was asked on CNN was, would greater gun control laws have stopped this shooting? So now a lot of people might perceive that question as, do you favor more gun controls? But the argument was, well, no, not this shooting. This guy could have gotten a bomb. He was building bombs in his apartment, so forth. He was very deranged, so forth.
It's getting very Clinton-esque.
Well,
it depends on what the meaning of is.
The Republicans flat out call it a flip-flop. But it's,
how is it not?
It's clearly, especially when you look at his statements, where he even said last week, hey, it was the AR-15 in that movie theater that killed or injured most people. So we need to ask the question: does everybody need to be buying these? You're like, whoa, that sounds like somebody who is maybe talking about an assault weapons ban. But then you sort of press him, and he's like, well, I'm not saying that we do or we don't. I'm just saying conversation. I mean, it's like Hickenjello, right? You just can't, you cannot pin it down.
All right, was that the first use of Hickenjello?
I think it's the first I heard it. That's pretty good.
All right, let it be coined now. It didn't come from me. It came from Tim Hoover. You get a dime every time it's used from now on. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What is it? I mean, the governor for the last couple of years has been. He's the most popular governor in the country.
Right.
And he's able to be whatever it is you want him to be because he hasn't really had to take on any tough issues.
Right.
Because the Republican House has taken care of that. So now there's going to be civil unions. Now there's going to be gun control laws. Now there's going to be new energy mandates perhaps going up. There's his to be determined. Talk about Hickenjello. We're going to do something about taxes, but we don't know.
What is to be determined?
But
we don't even know.
Yeah, we can't
even name
know.
the committee, right? We can't even decide what this committee should be called.
There's going to be weed regulations coming. I mean, he's going to have to take some stances.
Death penalty.
Well, and he has, though. I mean, he did come out in favor of the civil unions last year, a strong proponent of it. He tried to get Frank McNulty to let it get passed in those last days, called for the special session, for it. So he's called for gun control, some sort of conversation.
He's never called for gun control.
You're right.
He has called for a
something
conversation.
on that. I mean, I don't remember what he said about death penalty, but so he has done that. But you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. When he was mayor of Denver, a one-party town, he didn't have to take sides. The last 2 years in the legislature, he's been insulated from that.
Exactly.
So it's going to be kind of interesting.
Yeah, the ribbon cuttings
And I've asked a lot of Republicans this. How are you going to rely on your governor to use that veto pen as, you remember Owens used to say that all the time. Hickenlooper's more of a Republican governor than he is a Democratic governor.
You assert that. We'll see.
And we'll see. But
I couldn't disagree with you more. As mayor, he was able to raise taxes and debt unlike Ted Kennedy's wildest
And that's what
dreams.
Democrats in Denver wanted to do.
With the acquiescence of voters.
The voters voted. They approved it every single time.
Very in Denver. It's pretty easy to get a tax increase.
Hang on a second. This is not just in Denver. He was the prime mover behind Fast
RTD,
Tracks,
sure.
which was 7 districts.
I agree.
Referendum C, which was
But
statewide.
he had a coalition of people.
That one was statewide.
But my point being, nobody sells tax and debt increases the way that Hickenlooper does. Whether he's riding a train, falling out of the sky for tax increases, running around with Sesame Street characters dressed up as A through I, the guy knows how to sell. And that's going to happen this year.
Small technical point of order. He and Owens and others will still insist that Ref C was not a tax increase. Okay, so that is how they sold it. Maybe is that they sold it as not a tax increase. So,
but it most certainly
but your
was
point, your
because
larger
of the
point
billions
is,
of dollars we didn't get back.
Your larger point is taken that they have sold things that actually were undisputable tax increases and sold them quite well.
Hickenlooper has had to, thanks to the economy, keep his powder dry on that pixie dust. And I think this is the year we're likely to see something.
And he will not. He will not tip his hand or indicate whether long term he will support a tax increase or not. I sense that folks like you would rather, if he's going to go for a tax increase, just say it. You'd much rather he do that than than never be.
Yeah, the last thing you want to know, a politician wants the voters to know, is how you stand on things. That's the last thing I want to tell. That's why he's so popular. You don't know what he stands for.
Yeah. Right. Well, always the criticism of Hickenlooper is that people can leave a room after he's spoken, and people divided, incredibly divided on their beliefs, and all go away thinking that he agrees with them.
That's a talent. And now he's a single man.
He's
actually that works
he's
well.
Still married. He's just separated.
Oh,
Although I do know a reporter, Mr. Governor, at my paper who found out you were separated and wants to meet you.
What's his name?
His name is.
No, he is just separated, and so there's no divorce has occurred thus yet.
And by the way, that was another story that came through, and I thought was handled very well. And that when Governor Owens went through his separation, that there was all sorts of speculation. There were rumors of affairs and love children everywhere. This time around, it seems as though. This year, when the same story popped out, that people gave the Hickenloopers a wide berth to have some of their privacy and deal with it. Am I wrong on that?
And I think because they came out and just said it. It didn't build up for a couple weeks. There wasn't some scandal behind it. I mean,
there wasn't a scandal.
You've seen Hickenlooper. Who would go out with him? I mean, really.
He's an engaging guy.
I can't see him having an affair. He just doesn't seem that. I don't know. I don't know, maybe I should stop right there.
You got to stop right there.
He's not bald, okay? He's just not good with women.
He's not going to.
He's not good with women.
You've got to.
He's a former geologist. He knows a ton about horizontal drilling, right?
So. You're going to have to edit that one out.
That was 2 points for the Post. All right. While we're talking, we've got a couple minutes left. The other story that seemed to brew last year was this Tabor lawsuit that many of us, myself included, laughed off.
Right.
The standing of Herb Fenster bringing this lawsuit saying it's illegal to have this vote on taxes. The United States Constitution disagrees with that. And lo and behold, I shouldn't be surprised, it made it through its first hurdle.
It sure did, and we were fascinated to watch the Attorney General's office arguing, telling the judge who had already ruled, basically saying this lawsuit is going forward, and the Attorney General's office basically saying, no, Judge, you're wrong. Well, that never works, okay? And it never works. The judge said, look, it's going through. Give me another argument, and they couldn't come up with one. And David Skaggs, who's also arguing that case, he's a pretty smart guy, so.
Yeah, basically the Attorney General's office came in with a very well-researched argument, but it was just on this one point that there was a 100-year-old case that said that initiatives were okay and that's all fine, and the judge just flat out threw it out. He said, if that's your argument, yeah, you're wrong.
All right, minute left. What was the big story of 2012? Start over here. The history books will remember 2012 in Colorado.
I think you have to look at the swing state status and the incredible wins by Democrats. Obama won again, and these were successful, pretty much a rout for them.
I'm going to agree, and that was the big thing. And a lot of things played into that. Civil unions played into that. I think the fires played into that. A lot of issues played into that same thing, and it made Colorado nationally watched.
The big lesson from 2012, never, ever be a swing state, because you won't have oxygen or money to do anything else.
But we got some good economic development from
yes,
all
yes,
that.
all the TV stations other than
Yeah.
KBDI Channel 12, Colorado Public Television, made a lot of money off
That's
it.
true. That's
Charles, thank you. Tim, thank you. And thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio on Sunday afternoons. Go to independenceinstitute.org. Tell a friend. We'll see you next week.